Next, we're going to talk about some of the false claims and some of the answers with regard to believing in the resurrection of Jesus. Believing that it wasn't something other than a resurrection. Admitting that, yes, the body was not there, but whether Jesus had actually risen from the dead is the next question, believing the gospel account. So I'm going to go through 5 false claims that people made with regard to the resurrection. So the first false claim is that Jesus was just basically a reanimated corpse. And what we mean by that is that, remember, Lazarus was the one, his friend, that was brought out of the tomb, raised from the dead. Remember, his 2 sisters were crying, and Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. If you remember that story, Lazarus walked out completely wrapped still in his burial cloths. Some people said that Jesus, yes, maybe Jesus did rise from the dead, but he was just a reanimated corpse like Lazarus. But there were a lot of differences between Lazarus and Jesus. One of the things is that the body of Lazarus never left the tomb. It was always there. However, Jesus's body was not there. The tomb was empty, and there was no dead body in there that rose. When Lazarus came out of the tomb, he was fully wrapped up still in the burial cloths. However, Jesus, his cloths were left in the tomb. So if he left his cloths behind, then what did he wear when he came out of the tomb? Was he naked? Who gave him clothing? Who was there when they saw him rise from the dead in a human way? Lazarus returns to a regular human life, and meaning that he has to go through his normal life again. He has to go back and start working and eating and doing everything that normal people do. However, Jesus didn't really return to a normal human life. Jesus comes and goes. He's more almost like a spirit that comes and goes. He never remains in one spot for long. And then finally, Lazarus must die again. He dies at some other point, just like he returns to being a normal human, and normal humans die. However, Jesus, we never really hear again about Jesus's death. We hear, as in the Gospels, that Jesus just rises into heaven, and what that means, we're not really sure. That's a topic that we'll get to the next section. The next false claim is that Jesus was just a reincarnation. But if you remember, reincarnation is when the body dies, but the soul lives on in a new body. However, Jesus was still in his own body. People recognized him and spoke to him. Thomas touched the wounds of the same crucified man. So it was more than the soul going on and living in some other person's body. The third false claim is that the body was stolen. And you remember that one of the gospel accounts, Matthew's account, indicated that the guards were paid to say that the body was stolen. However, the answer to that is that Pilate had assigned 2 soldiers to guard Jesus. And so what happened to the guards? Did they not do their jobs? Were they tricked? Were they bullied into letting them open up the tomb? What exactly... How would the guards allow something like that to happen? Also, we hear the account of the guards being so shocked when they see the angel rolling back the stone and really discovering that Jesus was gone. So shocked that they were willing to go back to the chief priests and elders and tell them that what had happened. So if it was that the apostles stole the body, wouldn't they just protect themselves by not telling anyone, or would they report on the apostles? No, they didn't do that. They told the truth, and then the guards were told to lie and say the body was stolen. And finally, if it was stolen, wouldn't Pilate and the chief priests have gone looking for it? Couldn't they force someone? Where did they put the body? Couldn't they have found out somehow, quote unquote detective work, found out where was Jesus? If they were so determined to break that rumor that the body was stolen, well then why didn't they go in search of it? Because they knew from the guards that something miraculous had happened. The fourth false claim is that the resurrection is just a psychological way of saying that the ministry would live on, that it wasn't really Jesus rising from the dead. It wasn't a full a physical resurrection, just that, like, oh, life will go on, Seton Hall Prep will go on in the future, that kind of thing. But in all four gospel accounts, it makes it very clear that it's not just an emotional, psychological thing, that it really was a physical resurrection. And then if it was just a ministry type of ministry going on, then why was the tomb empty? Why is it necessary to not have the body if you're just talking about something psychological? And then the fifth claim is that it was all a hoax, that there was never an empty tomb, there was never a physical resurrection. All the reports of seeing Jesus risen from the dead, that never really happened. But the question is, why would the apostles be willing to die for a hoax? And if you can remember, when Jesus was crucified, the apostles ran. In fact, Peter denied him 3 times. And yet here in like 2 days, the next thing you know, they're not afraid to hide anymore. Now all of a sudden they're out there proclaiming the good news. Something had to have been a dramatic change for the apostles to be going out and then, professing their faith. I mean, just a short time ago, they were hiding. And so something had to happen that would have changed their whole attitude. Also, if it was a hoax, then why didn't, when we hear later, we're going to hear the story about Thomas, that he goes and he says he wants to see the wounds of Jesus before he believes in what the other apostles are telling him. The other apostles see the risen Lord and tell Thomas, because he's not there. And Thomas says, I want to see proof of his wounds. So, what's the matter? Thomas wasn't in on the hoax. And then why would they admit that one of their own apostles didn't believe? Why would they go through the trouble of talking about that if why wouldn't Thomas, in other words, be in on the whole hoax? Why one apostle would be out of that hoax? And so those are 5 of the false claims, and some of the very quick, without being in class, just trying to summarize them really quick, some of the retorts or the answers back to those false claims of why we believe that it truly was a resurrection of Jesus's body. And I'm going to do another screencast in a short time as kind of more of a conclusion. And then we're going to talk about some of the appearances of the risen Lord.